Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Classical Academy podcast, your friendly guide to the world of classical Christian education. I'm Shay Ramquist, the producer of the podcast, filling in for our regular host, Dr. Mark Phillips. My special guest today is Dr. Chris Perrin. Chris has been a leading figure in the classical Christian movement for over 25 years. He served as a founding headmaster of a classical school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from 1997 to 2007. And in 2001, Chris founded the Classical Academic Press, which has grown to become one of the top publishing houses in classical education. Chris is a regular speaker in classical Christian education conferences around the country, and he has written a number of books, including this summer, along with co-author Carrie Eben. He released The Good Teacher, 10 Key Pedagogical Principles that will transform your teaching. Chris recently spoke to the faculty here at Trinity Classical Academy about the Good Teacher book and agreed to join our podcast so he could share some of that goodness with our audience as well. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Chris, when we talk about what makes classical Christian education special, we often focus on the what's, meaning the highlights of our rich education curriculum, like great books from authors like Homer and Plato or Dante and Shakespeare. Why have you decided to write a book about the hows or the methods by which we engage in our education?
Yeah, you're right to emphasize the importance of what it is that we seek, maybe, or tell us the what, as you put it, because we are after virtue and holiness and human flourishing and skill that prepares men and women for whatever they may be called to do. That's what we're seeking. But if that's a destination, there has to be a road to get there. And ultimately, that's kind of how I see a method. It's a way. Even from the etymology of the Greek's kind of fun in this particular case. Etymologies don't always help, but in this case, I think it does. Hodos means road or way. So when Jesus said that he was the way, the truth, and the life, he said that he was the Hodos and the Zoe, the life, and he was the aletheia, the way, the truth, the life. And so, in meta means with. So just what's the road that we're going to use to get to the destination? And one of those roads is the teacher. The teacher is a means by which a student is educated. And so we've titled this book, The Good Teacher, because a teacher becomes a kind of portal and a pathway, certainly a pathway walker with the student who is seeking a destination. I like the way some of the monks of old talked about their own goal in growing in holiness. They referred to walking along the king's highway, and they were making a metaphor, making reference to the way in the ancient world there was a highway that led to the palace of the king, and they wanted to stay on the king's highway so that they would eventually get to the palace. And so what is that way that we should go? Let's walk in it. And of course, we know that Christ is the way to the Father. But there's that passage in Jeremiah, Jeremiah 6, where the Lord says, keep to the ancient paths, keep to the ancient ways, and walk in it, and you will find quiet and rest for your souls. So we want to go back to those ways, and we want to walk along the path of those who have walked before us. And in the classical tradition, we're recovering a tradition, a way, if you will, a way of being educated that's been handed down to us, and it's been refined and tested, proven, I believe. And it's always fresh. And we're receiving that and trying to give it to our students. So I like this metaphor of the path and the way. I don't mind the word method, but often in common parlance, method means something highly technical, such that you don't have to really worry about why you're doing it. You just focus on techniques. But a techne should be a skill or a means to take you someplace that's really good. So I'm glad you start with the what. But, okay, if the teacher is one of those ways, what does it mean to be a good teacher? And in the book, we mean two things by that. The teacher needs to be good in the sense that the teacher needs to be an example, a model for living a full human and holy life, such that he or she would be a compelling model that students encountering this teacher would want to imitate, follow. So are you a good teacher? Are you a good human who happens to be a teacher? Are you a person worthy of of imitation and emulation. That's important. In fact, I think that's probably of primary importance, that when you hire a teacher here at Trinity, is that person a good person? Is it the kind of person you'd want your son and daughter to spend a lot of time with, get to know? Is it the kind of person you'd love to be with your family over the weekend, camping with your kids, hiking with your kids, being a kind of influence as an older, more mature human being? So we mean good in that sense, virtuous, holy. And then only secondarily do we mean that the teacher should be skilled as a pedagogue.
Yeah. So it's not enough to just open up a classroom, bring in the students, and then hand out copies of Augustine's Confessions. We need a person that will lead us towards the truth and what is good and beautiful as well. But it's hard to be good, right? If it were easy, then we'd all just be good automatically. Walking that way takes a lot of time and a lot of intentionality. So your book identifies these 10 principles that good teachers would be walking in with their students. I think it's a wonderful resource for teachers. I enjoyed reading it over the summer myself. But I think also parents would benefit from understanding some of these principles. Sometimes what they're getting with a classical education for their students can be a little unexpected, or they're not quite sure what it is. They can tell it's producing good fruit in the students at the school, but they're not sure exactly the nuts and bolts of it or what walking in that way might look like. So would you be willing to highlight maybe one or two of the principles that are in the book that would be good, especially for someone new to classical education, either a teacher or maybe a parent, that they should be understanding is part of the package here?
Well, thanks for reading the book and enjoying it. I appreciate that. So if maybe the principle of principles is you want a virtuous human being in front of your students, but then that teacher does have to teach. And so Carrie and I, my co-author Carrie Eben, we were asking this question for quite some time. What are those principles that we have discerned have been passed down to us? And so this list that we have in the book, the 10 that we have, didn't fall from heaven. It's not the only way that you could sequence or organize what good teaching looks like. But they are principles, meaning they're not techniques. A technique is a particular practice. A principle is an idea that will govern any particular practice. It's a first thing, from the Latin principium. It's something that is first. And Lewis says someplace that if we disorder the first things from the second things, we lose both of them. When we make the second thing the first thing, this is disordered and problematic. So we're trying to properly order what it means to be a teacher by thinking about principles even before we try to collect and use techniques. There's 10 of them, and I won't list them all, but they describe human realities. And they describe realities that are true not only of teaching, but all reality. So it's taking a reality, a cosmic reality, if you will, something about the way the world is made, understanding it, and then saying, if this is true, what does it mean about teaching? So, for example, one of the first ones we list is multum non multa, which means much, not many. And it's, of course, a Latin phrase, but it translates to something like this. It's better to study a few things muchly, deeply, than to study a lot of things in a superficial, cursory way, such that we cover the material. And when we do that, when we cover material and we're taught too much in a given segment of time, one, we're not likely to linger and love what is being taught to us. We just don't have time to savor it, ponder it. And secondly, we're not likely to remember it. This is just human wisdom. You can only enjoy so much at a time. For example, your stomach is of a certain size and your mouth you can only eat so much in a sitting. We know this, but we have overdone it at times to our detriment, right? So if you want to savor a really good meal, it needs to be apportioned. It needs to be ordered. And a really good meal at your favorite restaurant on your anniversary, you want to savor that meal. You want to take your time with each bite and each course. And if you were told to rush through and pound it down, you would probably resist this and consider it to be a bad thing. Well, this is just so therefore it's true of eating, it's true of learning, it's true of so many things. We can only love what we linger over. And contemplation and gazing is a sign of love. So when you fell in love with your wife, there were times when you would just gaze and gaze. I hope you still do.
Absolutely.
The face of your children, you gaze at them, you love them, they continue to amaze. And you don't want to take your gaze away. So there's this Latin phrase, ubi oculus amor est, where there is the eye, there is love. So when you're looking and gazing, this is where love is cultivated. So this translates to then how we teach as well. What it say when it comes to literature? How many books should an 11th grader read in a year? Well, why not 15? Because they're all good. The more, the better, you would think, right? More good books. Keep reading them. There's a lot to read in a lifetime. And AP would ask you, AP English would say, well, you should read 15 novels or so to get the AP credit. Well, that's a lot of books. Well, why don't we just double it and make it 30? Actually, at a certain point, it becomes absurd.
Yeah.
So then what is the right number? How many books can you really study and know and love? How do you love Dante? Can you read the entire comedy? How would you do that? And I'm just using literature as an example, but I think this applies to anything.
Yeah.
If you were trying to read, Shakespeare, how long should it take you to read through King Lear or Midsummer Night's Dream? Some of us did those in like a week or two.
Yeah.
And then so there's this joke in classical education, I'm sure you've heard it, it's popular to either love Shakespeare or pretend that you do. Because some of us did not have a good experience in high school with Shakespeare, and so we didn't get him, and yet we're told that he's the greatest writer in English language, but we haven't been able to love him, haven't been able to appreciate him, and it's not our fault. It's because we were not taught properly. We were taught Shakespeare too quick. We didn't linger. We didn't understand. We weren't able to gaze and see and appreciate. C.S. Lewis, in one of his letters, he puts it this way: we should study far fewer subjects. We should teach far fewer subjects and teach them far better. That's how he puts it.
Yeah.
So I think that we have inherited that problem from progressive educators even in our classical schools. The average classical school, in my opinion, is trying to do too much. And students were starting to lose their love for the arts that we're teaching them and the content that we're teaching them because they don't have time to linger. We move them through their paces too fast. And we also fall prey to the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge, they've done, by the way, psychological experiments on this. You might have heard about them. They're kind of funny. Yeah. It's when you know something really well, such that you've forgotten how you learned it and what it was like to learn it. You project the way that subject can be learned as far easier than it really is into a student. And so then you teach too much and you teach too quickly. And then you even get frustrated when students aren't learning it because it can't be that hard. You know it like the back of your hand. We've all had teachers like that at one time or another.
Yeah.
They have forgotten what it was like to learn the subject. Or perhaps they were so bright at learning this particular art that they did learn it quickly because they're like 5% of the population that can. And then they think that 100% of the population should be able to learn it as quickly as they did. So I'm a fan of multum non multa. I think we need to teach far fewer subjects. I think we need to teach fewer books, fewer concepts, but teach them far better so that students could actually learn them permanently and love them. And then here's the great ROI. Here's the great return on that investment, because it sounds like you're slowing down.
Yeah, I was going to say, this sounds really beautiful. It sounds idealistic, but
impractical.
I can imagine a parent thinking, like, this isn't going to get my kid into college. Like, is this really practical? Yeah, but say more about that.
Yeah, you study what you love. So it's so important to privilege the cultivation of loving something to students, because if they love it, and you've able to, I almost said, trick them into loving something. You don't have to trick them. You just help them to love what they should love. Then what will they do on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon when their time is free? If they've come to love the San Diego Padres or the Los Angeles Dodgers, they'll just keep watching games and talking about that with friends and so on. But what if they have come to love Shakespeare? Then they're reading the next play. And I've seen this happen with the younger kids too. So I've been using Shakespeare as an example, but let's take the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. There's 7 of them or something. So you read The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. How long should you take 3rd or 4th graders through that book? It's not 2 weeks. It's not as fast as they could get through it.
Right.
So that you could go on to the next one. You probably need to take 5 or 6 weeks with that book when you're first teaching them. Some of these are students, they're some of the first books they read. And help them to enter in and to live in Narnia. such that, Lucy and Susan and Peter and Edmund, they become friends of theirs, and they begin to loathe the White Witch and so on, and they want to be in Narnia and visit Mr. Tumley. This becomes their life, and they want to have tea and so forth, like Mr. Tumley. Well, after 6 weeks, they can grow to love that, and then what's nice? What should you do next? I think what you do is, as a teacher, you say, by the way, I'm glad you enjoyed The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe. I have a book here called The Horse and Its Boy, and another one called Silver Chair, and another one called The Magician's Nephew. And I have several copies if any of you would be interested. It's just the next part of the story.
Yeah.
The majority of those kids will be taking that book home and reading it on their own. That's the return, is when the student has become his own teacher, or when the student is learning even when you're not around. So that's what love does. Love, true love for something true, good, or beautiful, compels us to keep going deeper.
Yeah, I think it's such a different approach to what we're used to, which is more of a factory assembly line model where we just bring the student, pop open their head, dump in the content. They maybe regurgitate it back for a little bit to show that they have somehow absorbed it minimally, and then we think that's education, as opposed to this other idea, which is lighting a fire of love that spreads, that can motivate a student that for a lifetime of not only learning, but learning what really matters. And then I think from what I've seen in the classroom, I'm sure what you've seen too, that type of approach actually creates a much more avid, quick learner for anything else in the future.
Yeah, they get a taste for what this can be, and so it's transferable.
Yeah.
If I've done this with literature, maybe I can do this with biology. I can learn to love the human cell, or plant cells, or botany, whatever it may be that's before us, and go deeper and achieve a kind of mastery of this thing through my love, and then that will enable me to take the next step. Now, and this doesn't mean, by the way, that educators don't think carefully about what base of knowledge does need to be mastered, and the sequence of acquiring that knowledge and the skills that are requisite to acquiring that knowledge. This should be done intentionally, and there should be, a basic plan for how we're going to get there, and more than one book.
Yeah.
Unless maybe you're teaching, all 3 books of the comedy.
Sure.
That might take most of a year if you chose to do that. But we want to avoid excess in any direction. So teaching too many books is an excess. Teaching too few is also a corruption.
Yeah.
It's a deficiency. So there is a place for pushing and asking more of students, but it should be moderated and careful. And in general, we should be thinking of teaching fewer things better, rather than teaching a lot of things in this kind of superficial way. I mean, Shay, we've all done this, and the listeners know this. You've taken courses in college, the names of which you can't even remember, but you got an A.
Sure.
Like, you figured out how to cover the material for short-term recall. You didn't love it. You just put it in there temporarily in your short-term memory because you had to do it for a grade. It was required of you. You didn't have enough time to see it and gaze upon it so that you might actually enjoy and love it, because you didn't give yourself enough time, and perhaps nor did your professor. That just means when we stand up before students, we have to be able to say, what I'm going to teach you is worthy of your time.
Yeah.
It's worthy of you knowing. It's lovely, and let me tell you, or at least begin to describe for you, why I think it is lovely. And then I want you to see for yourself with your own eyes why this is a lovely thing and worthy of your time. And I get the privilege of being able to introduce you to this thing that is going to be time very well spent. And I might say something like, I'm thrilled to be able to be the one introducing this to you. I can't wait for you to come to see it. Much like you would do with me if you took me out to your favorite restaurant here in Valencia.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to love this place. You'd take us in and you'd guide me in and be sharing something worthy of my time.
Yeah. I love that idea of the teacher needs to be the one who's first and foremost loving the thing that they're teaching, and that they're trying to be contagious and spread that love to their students, and that the students really resonate with that passion when they see it with the teacher. And if that's gone, if the teacher doesn't understand what is so beautiful or incredible about their subject area, that can be so deadening to a class.
Yeah, why else would you want to be a teacher?
Yeah.
Why else would you want to stand in front of a class and teach if you don't even enjoy what you're doing or the art that you're teaching? I mean, sometimes that happens. Sometimes we do things that we don't want to do, et cetera. But that's not where we want to be for most of the time.
Yeah.
We don't want our students to be there either.
Yeah.
So, Augustine and Plato and others have said things like this, that education is largely a matter of helping humans to love that which is lovely.
Yeah.
So is the thing that you're teaching lovely? That means you should be a lover of it.
Yeah.
And that means that it should be contagious.
Yeah.
Like it should shine forth from you and not just be an exercise for test preparation.
That's right. So, I mean, this whole conversation we've been having for the last few minutes was all just based around mostly the first principle in the book, which was, I think, multum non multa, right?
Right.
Yeah, and there's 9 more of these principles that are like that, equally rich and important for good teachers to be on the pathway, at least, to implementing in their own classrooms, maybe even in their own lives. I'm pleased to report that here at Trinity, we have so many wonderful teachers that are deeply engaged with their subjects, with the books they get to teach, with their students, and that they are loving these things and passing on that love. But when a parent is in a school where there are teachers like this, what do you think that they can be doing to support their teachers that they find that have this approach, or maybe at home with the student, their own children, to reinforce this way of looking at education?
Thank you for that question. It's so important that parents are kind of co-teachers, and we are harmonized and unified in raising up our children. And that's, of course, like the old word educatio meant. It was a raising up, a rearing, cultivating. If we're returning to that kind of education, parents are the first educators.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is that parents themselves continue to be students in their own way in the home. Of course, they can support in those practical ways by, monitoring work and homework and helping the students to grow in their ability to organize and, be responsible in the allocation of their time across the rest of their life, because they're not only students, they're also sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, and so on. And those things have to be harmonized. And it'll be the mom and dad, the parents, who are best able to help them grow in that. And that's critical. To be a flourishing human being, you have to order your entire life, not just your academic life. And that means nutrition. It means physical strength, growing spiritually and ecclesially in the church and familially and so on. Those things are important. So, but maybe they're kind of table stakes.
Yeah.
But, if as a parent here at Trinity, what could you do? Well, maybe moderately mirror the curriculum that your son or daughter is enjoying. So let's go back to Shakespeare. It's 11th grade, and your son is studying Shakespeare. And you're maybe thinking, like we were earlier in this conversation, that you didn't really get Shakespeare. You don't know why. You have that same issue. Like, wow, I understand Shakespeare is supposed to be the greatest writer in the English language, but I don't get it. I don't enjoy him. I have to be honest. I don't enjoy Shakespeare. Well, to choose to grow and to have the humility to maybe take up some reading of Shakespeare again, maybe get some resources even from the school here, and maybe even to read one of the same plays that your child is reading.
Yeah.
And continue to grow yourself.
Yeah.
You may be a busy person of business or domesticity that's very busy, and you just I don't have time to do that. Well, I think you can find some time to do that, because we should all be continuing to grow in learning the true, the good, and the beautiful, enjoying it. It might also be that you're a parent and there's something in your past life that you did love that is an art, a discipline, a fine art, a musical art, a pastime, something that is related to the life of human flourishing and the engagement of that which is true, good, beautiful, and holy. Maybe when you became a parent, you got busy and you put that aside. What if you picked it up again? Even if you picked it up lightly again.
Yeah.
So, for example, I know so many parents who've enjoyed some art, like, let's just take one of the musical arts, like somebody who's played the piano or the guitar and sung and been pretty good at it. But that was in college.
Yeah. And
they no longer play the guitar or the violin or the piano. What would it look like if once every 2 weeks you were saying to your kids, well, mommy's going to be gone for the next 90 minutes because she's going for her piano lesson?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if, you started to pick up the piano again and started to do some self-study, or joined an ensemble, or, you picked up something that was an art that blessed you and blessed others. You picked it up again.
Yeah, I think parents might worry, I wouldn't be good at it, right? It'd be very vulnerable to be having to run scales again or making mistakes, maybe even in front of the children, right? But I think that's so important too, to model to your kids. How do you go back to a beginner level, or how do you show that you've not yet achieved, and what does this process look like? And maybe give the parent compassion for the children too, about how hard it is for them to be a learner and a beginner in all these levels.
It's modeling virtue. In that case, maybe courage.
Yeah.
The courage to go back to something you were once good at.
Yeah.
My sister used to be a competitive horse rider, and she hasn't done it but she's going back. Yeah. As of like 6 months ago, she's riding now every week, and it's hard. But her kids admire her for it, right? Because they see her working hard at it again, and not doing as well as what she used to, but she's making the comeback, as it were.
Yeah.
So there's something lovely about that, because what it's doing is just modeling what it means to be a growing human being. Mm-hmm. Another thing that comes to mind, Shay, is most parents could take a book every semester, one book, and read it together. A book that perhaps the kids are not reading. So it might be that mom and dad, have never read Augustine's Confessions, and so they decide, they're going to get some help. They're not just going to dive into it without help, but they consult with some others, and maybe they even join a little book club, or maybe there's 3 or 4 people, or maybe it's just the 2 of them, or maybe it's a really great novel. Maybe it's a Jane Austen novel, and they read it together and have discussion occasionally about it at the dinner table, so that the kids see that mom and dad are reading their own book and talking about it, not just asking us about the books that we're reading.
Yeah.
And so several good things can happen at the same time when you do that. What you're modeling, the actual encounter of a good book, by Jane Austen, say Pride and Prejudice, the conversation that it starts around the table, people from outside the family who maybe get pulled in. It's a win-win-win. So I think ongoing, small, modest, ongoing learning by the parents is important.
Yeah, you don't have to start with a huge book. Starting small, starting easy. This summer I was reading Frankenstein because my son is going to do that this year. He's starting 9th grade here at Trinity, and I'd never read it before, I realized. And so I've been reading along with him, and it's been such a great chance to engage with him, ask him questions, him ask me questions about it. It's been great. And I will say to parents out there that are wondering how they could get started on something like this, could be literature, could be history, philosophy, even some of the sciences or maths. I know our faculty here at Trinity would be so happy if you just send us an email, came in for a meeting. We could get you started with something really accessible. Or we have all these other episodes of this podcast that offer little bite-sized intros to some of the great books that we study here at Trinity. But one way or another, maybe modeling for your students the type of life that we want for them. I'm reminded of this James Baldwin quote where he said that children have never been very good at listening to their parents, but they've never failed to imitate them. What we do is what our kids are going to do. So if we're not doing the types of things that we want our kids to do, they'll see that. If we're spending all our time just glued to our phones, why would they do anything different? But if we can model a different type of life where we're making music or reading, having good conversations, having great meals and having company over, things like that, that's a whole different way of being that we put before them.
Yeah, you're calling forth a great cultural challenge in this moment, which is how all of us, and I think it's at least 99.9% of us, have to struggle against the distraction of this modern world, this modern moment, the modern technology. It's the technology that brings us so many blessings, also brings us great distraction and some curses. And knowing how to sift that is really hard, and we need help to do that. It's hard to do alone. So there's some increasing, I think we're getting wiser about about the problem and what to do.
Yeah.
I will cite Justin Earley in his book, Habits of the Household, really thoughtful attorney who's a dad at a school in Richmond, the Veritas School in Richmond, and he just began to realize that he was just kind of in the corporate, distracted world and he felt like he couldn't get out of it. But he started to make some changes, and then he started to read the tradition, and then he started to write about it. People around the country, maybe the world, have been responding to him because he's a very thoughtful, articulate, vulnerable articulator of this problem. So I would say read Justin Earley's book, The Habits of the Household, and start thinking about, like he advocates for a day off of the phone. Like, take Sunday, put the phone away. Don't just fast from it one day a week completely. He has this scripture first dictum or rule. Start the day not with your phone. Don't go to sleep with it. Get an alarm clock and get the phone out of the room. And just a number of things that help moderate, not getting rid of the phone, but moderating it. But these things are having a great negative impact on our families. And we're naive if we think it's not going to be us.
Yeah.
That won't be our family. We can handle this. My son can be 16. He can handle a smartphone. It's not just Christians who are saying that this is not the case. Jonathan Haidt, the atheist who wrote the book, The Anxious Generation, has done all the research saying 16-year-olds cannot compete with a warehouse of supercomputers that are designed to keep your son on the phone.
That's right.
And that's what it is. So he says we ought not to give kids the opportunity to drive until they're 16. We certainly shouldn't give them a smartphone until they're 16. These are things to think about and consider. You know, it's not a law that's dropped out of the heavens, but I think we should be very, very concerned and careful about how we moderate technology in our homes.
Yeah. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, parents, students, teachers, but it's a challenge worth facing together as we try to develop these students that will love what they should love and become virtuous and happy and able to thrive in the real world. Chris, thanks for being with us to think through these things. Thank you for writing this book about the good teacher.
My pleasure.
And for being on this podcast today.
Thank you for having me. My best to all of you. And I'm honored to be back here on campus at Trinity Classical.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, listener, for joining us on the Classical Academy podcast presented by Trinity U. It's a service of Trinity Classical Academy here in Santa Clarita, California. I'm the producer, Shay Ramquist. Until next time, let's all continue to grow in wisdom, in virtue, and in the love of God.